Hello, this is a walkthrough of analyzing the evidence from Chapter 4. If you have this version, the 14th edition of the textbook, it'll be right in your book, but either way, we have the information here for you. So this is dealing with civil liberties, specifically the relationship between church and state. The First Amendment contains the Establishment Clause that says Congress shall not establish a religion. It also contains the Free Exercise Clause that Congress will not prohibit the free exercise of religion. So if you were in a classroom with me, we would be talking about this topic, and I might show this and say, what can we learn from this slide? So the question it is asking is, what do people think about whether the Ten Commandments should be displayed on government property? And it's broken down by party affiliation. One thing that is a little bit frustrating that we cannot learn from this slide is the date of when it was taken. So that would be something if you were ever writing a paper or if you were posting on the discussion forum and using some survey information to back up your argument, you would want to include the date. So other than that, what can we learn? We learn that a majority of Americans in all political parties are comfortable with the Ten Commandments being displayed on government property. The highest percentage is among Republicans. 85% of Republicans support this. 71% of independents, and 54% of Democrats. But no matter the party affiliation, more than half favor it. Okay, so the next one, what do we learn from this chart? So the question is, should public schools be able to ban religious dress, such as Muslim headscarves? And here we see that all parties come down on the no side. So only 31% of Democrats would say that public schools should be able to ban religious dress. Independents, 37% would say so, and Republicans, 48% would say so. But still less than half of any group would agree with this. One thing that is important about this question that really highlights how public opinion can be shaped by how questions are asked. So you can imagine if the question was just, should public schools be able to ban religious dress? It might be a different percentage. If they asked, should public schools be able to ban Muslim headscarves? It might be a different percentage in the answers. And if the question was, should public schools be able to ban religious dress, such as wearing a cross or some symbol of Christian faith? So the question that is asked can have a really big impact on the answers that you get. All right, so if you were doing the analyzing the evidence exercise, you would see a chart like this that shows the two questions side by side so you can compare them. So first, the question would be, which of these two survey questions is dealing with public opinion on the Establishment Clause? And that's the first one. So the Ten Commandments being displayed on government property has to do with establishing an official religion or showing preference for one religion over another. The next question would ask, which of these two issues has to do with the Free Exercise Clause? And that would be the second one. So religious dress, or the ability to wear symbols of your faith, has to do with free exercise. The third question is asking whether the parties are polarized on these issues, because often our impression of Democrats and Republicans is that they are completely opposite. So no matter what the question is, you will get completely opposite answers. But as we said, for these two, there really isn't evidence of polarization. Everyone is on one side of the issue for one question and the other side for the other question. So when you look at these three numbers, so you can say, the Republicans are more strongly in favor of the 10 Commandments being displayed on government property, but still more than half of Democrats agree. Similarly, on the other, no group has a majority in favor of schools banning religious dress. So you would say in this case, these issues really are not polarized. The next question would say, which issue is more contested among the public? So the way to get the answer to that is to look at the gap. So here we can see 85% of Republicans believe the 10 Commandments should be displayed on government property. 54% of Democrats. So that's a gap of 31 points. That is contested. It's not polarized, but it's contested. For the other question, it's only 48% versus 31%. So a smaller difference in opinion. To get a more examples of issues that are polarized or aren't polarized, I found another survey. So this is from Gallup, May 2020, and as you can see, there are a wide variety of issues. So some of them, there is a huge gap. In this case, it is not between Republicans and Democrats, but it's between liberals and conservatives. So ideology rather than party affiliation. But still, you can see issues towards the top of the chart where you can really say, yes, the parties are polarized. So looking up here, with abortion, 70% of liberals say this is morally acceptable. In contrast, only 18% of conservatives say this is morally acceptable. You can also look down at the bottom where there's again a gap. So with the death penalty, only 37% of liberals say it's morally acceptable, but 67% of conservatives say it's morally acceptable. There are also some issues, though, that really aren't polarized at all. These are the ones more in the middle of the chart. So for example, these right here. So when you look at the issue of birth control, 96% of liberals say this is acceptable. 87% of conservatives say it's acceptable. So big majorities across both ideologies would say this is fine. The complete opposite would be with the question of cloning humans. Only 10% of conservatives would say this is acceptable, only 15% of liberals. So really very little difference at all. So that's just an example of some issues. Yes, definitely very polarized. You have a majority of liberals feeling one way, a majority of conservatives feeling the other way, but not all issues. If you ask the question of which is the most contested, you would glance at these numbers and see which one has the biggest difference. And again, we will be back to abortion. That is the one with the biggest difference. Sorry, my pen is going crazy there. There we go. Really, the overwhelming majority of conservatives say this is not acceptable, and a pretty big majority of liberals say it is. Okay. So the last slide to show you has to do with Article 6 of the Constitution, which says no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification for public office. So although we know you are not required to be a member of a certain religion, in practice, voters are reluctant to vote for candidates who are outside of the majority religious group, me. Hopefully all of the lines are showing up there. So what this is asking is, if your party nominated a presidential candidate who was, there we go, Catholic, would you be willing to vote for that candidate? There we go. Now all the lines are there. So if I was asking you, what can we learn from this chart? You might say that, starting in 1937, less than half of Americans would be comfortable voting for a Jewish candidate for president. By 2015, which is the end of this survey data, it looks like about 90% would be comfortable. You see also an increase in people willing to vote for Catholic candidates. For Mormon candidates, it has increased from about 75% in 1967 to looks like about 80% in 2015. There have only been a couple recent years of asking about willingness to vote for a Muslim candidate, and it's about 60%. And finally, atheists are the group with the lowest support, or the lowest willingness of people to vote for a candidate for office. And that has also increased from less than 25% in 1959 up to, again, about 60%. And something you might notice if you look at the most recent snapshot, so in 2015, kind of public attitudes and public comfort with voting for either a Muslim candidate or an atheist is about comparable to their attitudes towards voting for a Jewish candidate, and even less favorable than voting for a Catholic candidate in 1937. And so those are the kind of the description that you can give, the conclusions you can draw from a chart like this. So hopefully that is really kind of helping you get more comfortable with these analyzing the evidence and looking at the charts. And the things to keep in mind are, first of all, what exactly is the chart saying? What is the specific question? What is the data? And then when you describe it, give some details. Try to find like 2 or 3 different facts, either, which is the highest, which is the lowest, how has it changed over time, things like that. Usually you can find, several details to kind of describe the chart and give a full picture of what's happening. So, hope that's helpful, and everyone have a good day.